Seriously, for real, we have not kissed at all. We have talked about it some and just making sure that we're on the same page as far as getting it prepared.
You know, you're getting ready to get married.
I did know that.
I thought it'd be time to have a man-to-man talk with you. Young couples don't, it's hard to learn on their own, so I've got a little present I'm going to give you. And it taught us everything we know. And so if I give this to you, you'll know everything we know.
Hey guys, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. This is one of those days where there's so much to talk about, and instead of doing like 37 different Duggar videos, we're gonna just talk about how Josh Duggar's siblings, along with his cousin, are responding to what went down in court yesterday. So yesterday it was the bond hearing for Mr. Josh Duggar, and he is being released today to a third-party custodian, LeCount and Maria Reber. This is a couple that Jim Bob knows from church and has convinced to take Josh in, despite the woman, Maria, expressing reservations about feeling comfortable with being alone around Josh. She also expressed concern about her 22-year-old daughter being left alone with Josh. This will be an interesting few months for Josh. Anyways, in the courtroom, there was several of his family members that were there, and it seems as though some of the family members on social media, it's business as usual, and they don't want to talk about it, and they don't want to think about it. And for others, they are using their social media platform to speak out or to subtly shade or express their dismay in what happened yesterday. So let's start with the first person, Jinger and Jeremy. They actually had a book that was launched on May 4th. Now, I was on their launch team, and as a part of being on the launch team, I had to promote a book for a minute. Now, would I recommend that you buy the book? I don't know. I don't think it's all that compelling. I also found the book to be rather boring, and the fact that Jeremy is involved in a church that's led by John MacArthur is extremely troubling to me. John MacArthur, in his own right, has extremely toxic beliefs that run very parallel to how the IBL believes about women, children, marriage, the LGBTQ+. In general, it's just trading one bad group for another. So you have Jeremy and Jinger they put out that very powerful statement, and they basically were like, we do not stand for this. We are firmly against this, and we want justice to be served, which got people like applauding Jinger and saying, yes, yes, Jinger, yes, because we know that she was one of Josh's targets as a child. So the book that she launched last week, or that just came out this week, has one page where she talks about what happened with Josh. In a chapter titled Strategic Visits, on the 81st page of the book, she writes about how the world found out about what happened to her as a child. She says this: earlier that day, my dad had gathered my siblings and me to tell us about the worst trial in our family history. A trial that we had long since dealt with and made our peace with was now public knowledge. Intimate details about our lives were splashed across magazine pages all over the internet for anyone and everyone to read. I felt shell-shocked, and if a bomb had exploded. She wrote, I moved in a daze, living in a nightmare, and I wished with all my heart it wasn't real. One of my siblings had made sinful choices, but it had all been years ago. It had been awful, but we had dealt with it as a family. We sought the Lord, we took the necessary steps to move toward healing, and offered up our forgiveness. Now that it was out in the public, the old wound was open, raw, and painful. When the paparazzi camped out up and down the block, we knew it was time to leave. Cameras snapped and the bulbs flashed anytime one of us dared to open a door. We were trapped in our house. Mom and Dad told us to pack up a few changes of clothes and load up the family bus. We were getting away. So they basically they get onto the bus, they get loaded up, and then she says this: I leaned my head back into the seat and closed my eyes. The bus engine rumbled and my brothers and sisters chattered noisily, but I barely noticed. My mind raced and questions I couldn't answer. How do we go forward, I thought. People outside my close circle now knew details about my life that I had never chosen to share. Details that I never wanted to share, and there would be fallout. That goes without saying that when you lead a public life, I just didn't know how far it would go. What would happen to us? How in the world would we get through this? Lord, please be quiet. Please quiet my mind. I prayed. I trust you. This feels like a bad dream. Everything is so uncertain, but I know you're good. And that's honestly the extent of what she talks about with Josh. That's literally it. Details came out that she didn't want people to know. She felt shell-shocked, and then she prayed to God that they give her strength. In her book, it sounds like it's an old family secret that, an old family issue that's now not an issue. So the timing of the book coming out with that story and now the new allegations, there's holes there because it feels like it wasn't just this isolated issue. It wasn't just he was a young kid and he didn't know any better and he was just curious. Now it seems like this is an ongoing habitual problem for Josh. And it's not a sin, it's a serious crime. That's how she basically discussed it, and then also discussed about how people in their lives showed up and made them food and people didn't want to be friends and that kind of stuff. But long of the short, that's all she had to say. So they are promoting their book, and if you're looking for dirt on Josh, that's all the book has. And overwhelmingly, the only other thing I took away from the book was that Jim Bob Duggar was so heavily involved in the courtship between the two of them that he invested 6 months of time in a conversation with Jeremy just so Jeremy could get to the point to talk to his daughter. If that's not the most controlling, obscene thing I'd read, that's one of the top 3 of the most ridiculous things I've heard. And Jim Bob did not want Jeremy into his life because of their theological differences, meaning that Jeremy and him disagree on salvation. Jeremy believes that God selects people that are predestined to go to heaven. Jim Bob believes simply believing in God means that you are saved. Jinger and Jeremy are promoting their books. They're acting like nothing's happening. They are putting it all over the place. And then you start to see that they're out walking in LA and the paparazzi snaps a photo of them. And it's just like, it just all comes off very tone deaf to me. But I understand they have to have their own thing in their own life. They didn't make a comment about anything that came out. Joanna and her husband were out at the camp, the family camp that Austin's family owns, which is in the Ozarks. And they didn't respond or say anything about what happened in court. So Austin and Joy were like business as usual. We're at the camp. We're looking at the mountains. Everything is great, which is, again, maybe she just doesn't want to say anything. Jill Dillard has been relatively quiet. Derick Dillard, who had been pretty busy on Twitter the days before, he was really just busy liking tweets yesterday. One in particular which said this: the IBLP ATI is a literal cult of Bill Gothard. It teaches his perverse version of Christianity that encourages submission, victimization. Fertility is placed above individuality or personhood. Jim Bob keeps the children compliant through financial and emotional abuse. So Derick liked that one, basically calling Jim Bob an abuser. And he liked a comment that said, I hope the veils unfold on the rest of the family and everyone sees that you guys are right. I'm praying for you. So Derick's basically asserting, yes, the IBLP is a cult. Jim Bob is a emotional and financial abuser, and that he wants to be vindicated. In a lot of ways, I hope they are vindicated, but I also hope in a lot of ways that really what ends up happening is accountability. Like, vindication is one thing, but really at the end of the day, accountability needs to happen. And thus far, there's been no accountability for the Duggars. And the only way you can hold them accountable is by talking to their sponsors and contacting the network and contacting the sponsors of TLC and letting them know that you don't want to watch the show and be affiliated with the Duggars. The only way that the Duggars got canceled the last time was because people were reaching out to sponsors and sponsors wanted nothing to do with them. The TLC will say, well, we're not a part of this, but honestly, Jim Bob Duggar's name was brought up so much in court that I think if you care, contact their sponsors and let them know that this is what they're involved in and this is what Jim Bob is endorsing, or he is paying for a defense for his son, or allegedly, or finding custodians to take care of his son after what was revealed in court. Any money he makes on the show basically is going to be bankrolling a defense fund for Josh, in my opinion. Anyways, Ben Seewald on his side, he liked a tweet that I thought was really bizarre but actually telling, and it was this: be careful not to talk crazy or dishonorable about your spouse to other folks. If you don't honor your husband and wife publicly and privately, other people won't either. So I would take this in the context of no talebearers and never give a false report or never give a bad report, which is part of the fundamentalist world of you have to always say good things about people and just never say anything bad publicly, like ever. So my takeaway from that is that he doesn't want to say anything about Jessa or her family, and he's not going to say anything negative about Jessa or her family, which is disturbing. Like, honestly, I would say a million things bad about Josh Duggar if I was in this family, but that's just me. Jessa Seewald has been pretty quiet. There hasn't been any activity from John, Josiah, Joseph, Kendra, any of them. So many of the Duggars are just going on a social media blackout, which isn't super different than what they were already doing already. And then Amy Duggar shared a video on her Instagram stories, which I thought was pretty telling. She shared a caterpillar, and it was basically like, here, watch.
Little creature deserves to be protected. You've got potential to be a beautiful, beautiful butterfly. Just saved his little life. He almost got vacuumed up.
So I felt like it was a metaphor of like, you need to protect the caterpillars because they're going to blossom into a butterfly, as though like the caterpillar was like a metaphor for a child. And you have to protect and be kind and be a good human, and you have to take care of that, nurture it so that it can get to the point where it can go into its cocoon and morph into a butterfly. And I think in a lot of ways that is a metaphor for taking care of your children, not allowing things like what Josh has downloaded. I know I spoke to Amy yesterday and she was completely shocked by all of the content that was coming out and horrified. Obviously, you guys saw yesterday that when I was live, Amy called me, which, by the way, I didn't out her. I saw some comments about that. Amy knew I was live and she actually sent me a message later on, like, I wish I would have like just jumped on live, but and said her work piece, but she needed time to digest and just disconnect from this. I know that she felt these ways because she communicated that she was horrified by what came out. She was disgusted. She was shocked. She was so sad for the children that were involved in this, that were the victims. And she told the Sun this. She says she now regrets being on 19 Kids and Counting. She said this: I wish I had known some more information before getting on the show. She said, I was blindsided about Josh's past, completely blindsided. I wish I had known the backstory beforehand. That way, I probably never would have been on the show. But she said, but it is what it is. I had a great time with the kids, and I love my children. And you know, now she's just enjoying her life off reality television. So this was echoed in her statements in 2015, where she said that she was shocked and horrified to find out about what Josh Duggar was doing, and it was a catalyst for her leaving TLC. So in 2015, when everything comes out, Jim Bob does not tell them about this. Jim Bob does not tell them really about anything. She is blindsided to learn what he's done to his sisters and her cousins. She's blindsided to hear about all of the stuff that's happening that she never knew about. And then in the middle of all of that, allowing the network to make her look like the bad guy and Josh look like the good guy. I mean, just imagine that. So she leaves the show. She regrets being on the show. And I know she's deeply troubled and sad. And honestly, just wants justice for the babies. So long of the short, you've got Amy standing with the victims. You have Derick speaking out against Jim Bob and Michelle and the family. You have Ben saying, I'm not going to say anything negative about my family. You have Jinger and Jeremy promoting their book and pretending like nothing's happening. And you have Joanna going to the Ozarks with Austin, again, pretending like nothing's happening. And then you have the rest of the family that are seemingly just ignoring or just not wanting to say a word. And honestly, I would say if I were some of them, if they can't say anything, don't say anything at all. I think that pretending like nothing's happening, if you have been complicit in this. So I feel like there's two people that have a right to continue to go about their way because they've been outspoken about their frustrations with the family. And that would be Jill Dillard and Amy, because they have not condoned any of this in any way, shape, or form. And they're both estranged from the family. The ones that continue to go on as normal and then don't say anything, that have been silently complicit in all of this, those are the ones, if they're going to continue to go on as normal, I feel like it's a little bit tone deaf, and you can't expect people to see Jinger and Jeremy putting the book and promoting the book and then not thinking, oh my God, in court today, we learned what your brother did, and you're just going along as business as normal. I understand you've got books to sell, but honestly, a media blackout for like a few hours, even a day, in honor of the victims would be a huge step and a huge indication to the public that you don't stand for this. That's just my opinion. But anyways, what are your thoughts about all of this? Does any of this surprise you? Does it not surprise you? Are you shocked that some aren't saying anything and that some seem to be standing with the family? And what about the ones that don't agree? Do you agree with Derick and do you agree with Amy? Tell me in the comments below. Bye, guys.